Yes, absolutely. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good evening,
evening.
bro.
Good evening, ma'am.
So, welcome, Mr. Piyush, and thanks a lot for taking time for our students. Really appreciate it. On a weekend, I'm sure you have a hectic schedule in the week on the weekdays, but you've made time for our students in the weekend. Thanks a lot from the bottom of our hearts.
No problem.
Yeah, very eager to listen to you and learn from you. Yes.
Hopefully, I will live up to those expectations.
Yes. So, shall I make you the host so that you can do screen sharing, Hannah?
Yeah, I think I can anyways do screen. Yeah, you will have to make me a host. Yeah. Do we expect any more people to join in, or is that all?
No, sir. We'll start off. We generally start on time.
Okay. All right. So let me share my screen. And let me know if you see a presentation.
Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay, wonderful. So, basically, I titled this as initially I titled this as Masterclass on Resume Writing, but then I thought that probably looking at the audience, some people may not want to deep dive into the detailed and advanced and complex topics. So I just want to share what I learned after reviewing 800 plus resumes over last 10, 12 years or so. All
Okay.
right, so we will start off.
Nice title, sir. Catchy title.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And just for the background for people to know that I am doing this under my site. So this Ace Your Resume is actually my site where I help people in whoever is struggling with resume writing, I help them. Okay, so first things first, and I'm directly jumping into the topic without beating around the bush because I think that's what we are keen to know, keen to understand what should go in resume, what is the key things that recruiters look for, why our resumes are not being selected. And then, of course, all of us have a tendency to get a template from Google or from a friend, and then we use that template, and then we say, oh, my resume is not getting selected. We don't think too much about what this template has and what it should have and whatnot. So first thing that we look at in every resume is like an objective. And what do I mean by that? So you would see a lot of resumes which have objective looking like this. So somebody will say seeking a position with a dynamic organization where I can learn as well as contribute. So this learning and contribution you would see in lot of resumes, right? Somebody would write as result oriented professional targeting assignment in internal auditing. Somebody with little more experience might write, and these are actually picked up from the real resumes. So these are not mocked up examples. These are real examples. So somebody would write in a greater detail to say, oh, I am a finance professional, having this much of experience, and I have done this, I have done that, and now I'm looking for something else. So some people would also write a very flowery language that will say a motivating, career, although it should be career, but as an export and import and logistics department. Yeah, so you can see where it's going. Like it talks a lot about what that candidate is actually looking for, what that candidate actually did in a smaller, in his role in a corporate career. Now there are some don'ts on resume writing or on objectives. So what does it mean? So whenever you have to write a generic objective, something like seeking a position with a dynamic organization and things like that, um, recommendation is not to write it because it does not help any hiring manager or any recruiting manager to understand what your contribution are or what you bring to the table. A lot of time people write verbose like the one that we see at the end. So the fourth one, there are a lot of verbs. I did this, I did that. Language is pretty flowery. Even the third one is pretty flowery language. So again, not to do it. Take those verbs out, keep it as simple as possible. So we go towards the do's. So if you have a specific objective, for example, someone would say that I am looking for an say internship opportunity in say artificial intelligence, or I am looking for an internship opportunity in finance, or I am looking for an for a part-time role in marketing, or I'm looking for a role in sales. So whenever you go specific, that's when I would recommend to use objective section in the resume. If you don't have anything specific, then I would say not to use it. Again, if you can customize it, all the more good. If you cannot customize, again, don't write it. Although you can still say that, oh, I'm looking for a very specific kind of assignment. So that will still fly off. Before I move forward, any questions on this topic? And yeah, last point is actually keep it brief. Don't go beyond like 2 or 3 points or 2 or 3 lines. Anything even beyond 2 lines will be like met with a lot of pessimism and people wouldn't actually read it. The whole objective of writing a resume is so that people should read, right? And if people don't like reading something, then there's no point putting it up on resume. Yeah.
So my question, sir, what
Mhm.
happens to a fresher who's not clear about what kind of role he wants to get into, or he's open for everything,
Yep.
for
So in
anything?
that case, yes, that's a very good question, Mira ma'am. So in that case, don't write an objective. Nobody needs an objective. And I have given a good example of what good objective is. So if you see the last one, it says award-winning accountant turned business analyst is exploring a business analyst role with a financial institution. Now here are things to note. Like I'm highlighting that that guy candidate is award-winning accountant, and then he's turned into business analyst. So this gives a significant detail to the hiring manager that yeah, this candidate has an accounting background. Now he's looking for a role into business analyst, and then he's looking for a role only with a financial institution. So if you get to this much of specifics, I think then it makes sense to add it. If you don't have the specific things, then don't add. There's no rule to say that you need to have a objective in every resume. There is no such rule. Okay. Any other question? No? All right. We'll move forward. The next section that we see in most resumes is profile summary. Now, what does profile summary would mean? Again, some good examples or some average examples. So profile summary, you would see a lot of people writing this way. Finance professional having 6 years of experience in finance analyst roles, hands-on experience in accounts payable, receivable, and whatnot. Then well acquainted with vendor management, budgeting, currently working with management consulting firm as account assistant. Let's look at one more example. A thorough professional with experience in diverse facets like finance, direct and indirect taxation, accounting, budgeting, and whatnot. Self-motivated to achieve performance, demonstrate improvements, ability to work seamlessly, influential communicator, 16 years of experience. And again, these all are real life examples, right? So somebody with 16 years of experience has these things written on his resume that he's a result-driven, dedicated professional with experience in managing change, competent professional with proficiency in banking, excellent interpersonal communication and organizational skill. Now imagine yourself to be a hiring manager, right? What would you do? What kind of impression does all of these summary statement or profile summary makes on you? Do you feel like you are lost in a lot of these details? Do you feel like, you are trying to, I don't know if there is question anybody has, but feel free to stop me if there is any question. But if you look at this, all of this professional summary, you would see that there's a lot of details, but there is still not enough. So what are the do's? Avoid. First of all, I would recommend again not to include professional summary. The reason being resume itself is a summary of all of your corporate career or your education career. Now, when you do a summary of summary, generally it doesn't work well. And again, based on whatever you have seen on this screen, right? I don't think this is good enough to make any decision. So in either case, you would go back and read the entire resume as a hiring manager. And which is what every hiring manager would do. They would go through the entire resume and then they would say, oh, I am looking for this specific skill. Does this candidate have this skill? So they wouldn't necessarily go by what you would proclaim. For example, here the candidate is saying ability to work seamlessly with senior management team. Now, of course, recruiter would read it, but he would still like to make his own assessment. So this statement does not help recruiter because this is again a very generic statement that anybody and everybody can write. Yeah, so again, avoid these generic statements. Keep it short. Even if you want to include it, keep it as short as possible. Don't go into too much of depth. And again, keep it crisp so that people are interested to read. The whole objective of writing this section is so that people read it. But if people are not interested, and most hiring managers would say, no, I would like to go through a detailed resume. So they wouldn't like to go through a summary. So therefore, the first recommendation is avoid it. Any questions? No? All right. Let's move to the next one, which probably I think a lot of people would find here, a lot of people here would find relevance to education and certification. A lot of people write education in this format, which is like a tabular format with the degree name and board university, year and percentages. Again, this format is not required. It's just because it's a tabular format, and a lot of time, a lot of applications or a lot of softwares wouldn't be able to read this tabular format. In most resumes, even this format is not consistent. Not everybody in India would write it in tabular format. Somebody would start with 10th, somebody will start with PGDM. So there's no consistent pattern that we follow. So again, the suggestion is kind of avoid this tabular format. The way you have to write it is plain text, and that too without a table. So a good example is something like this: Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, give the period. And then you can also mention, if you have got a very good marks, you can mention those marks. Or you can simply say that I have done, this like bachelor's in commerce from Bryn Mawr Maharashtra College of Commerce in this particular year, and that should suffice. If you have a very good mark, something like, you have like CGPA of 8 or 9 or 10, or you have got like 80, 85 or 90 percentile or percentages, then it makes sense to put it on a resume. If you have like average percentages, like I had average percentages, 60%, 70%, 80%, I don't think then that it makes sense to mention it. Sometimes it can, it may not always work in your favor. So better is not to include the percentages. You simply say that I have cleared my 12th, or I have cleared my BCom, or I have cleared my engineering, in a plain text, in a, in a natural typed way, not in a tabular format. Does that make sense? Anybody has question? I'm expecting few questions on this topic. All
No,
those who
sir.
have prepared, okay, all those who have prepared resume, do you have that in tabular format, or do you have that in a below textual format?
Apart from sir, that exams and board percentage, we can add some curriculum activities, that achievements during our schools and colleges.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we'll come to that.
Okay.
All right. So remember, and again, within, I think, education, you can actually have a similar section for certification too. If you have done a lot of certification, if you have done like 1 or 2, then you don't need to carve out a separate section. You simply add those certification along with the education section. Now, coming to your point, you mentioned about awards. So yeah, awards is a good way to write, and it should definitely be there. So again, we see some examples like here, people are writing data analytics consulting virtual internship KPMG 2020. Participated in this particular event organized by IFMR, awarded with round of applause for one of the best performance, second runner-up. Then there are, somebody would write it as accomplishment, somebody would say achievement. So again, different words, somebody would say awards. So here awarded EY kudos in the first year of internship for exemplary performance and going the extra mile in the quarterly and year-end audits. Consistently ranked first in school. So you see a difference between the two, the way these two are written. So what are the guidelines? Half pointer without rational doesn't make sense. Don't do it. For example, if you see the first screenshot, you would realize data analytics consulting virtual internship. Now, I don't understand, what does that mean? What is an achievement in it? Internship cannot be achievement, right? Or if somebody has participated in a specific event, what is an achievement? Achievement could be, oh, I got selected out of, let's say, 200 people participated, and I got selected out of that 200, and seats were like, let's say, 5 or 10. So that makes sense that you are being selected as one of the top 10 participants out of 200 people. When you give that context, then that makes a story to sell, right? Without context, it just says that, oh, participated in something. Now that probably does not mean anything. Now here also, second runner-up in APL, Alliance Premier League. I'm guessing this is a cricket tournament, but that's just my guesswork. It could be anything. It could be carom tournament. It could be chess. It could be some studies. You never know. So as a recruiter, I end up guessing what this candidate has done in this specific event. So it is always better that you put yourself in a shoes of interviewer and then think, whatever I have written here, does that even make sense when I read it? Should I explain it a little more? First of all, jargons like APL. Now I can't even guess, right, what APL would stand for. Fortunately, candidate here has mentioned Alliance Premier League. But again, what does this league stand for? That is not mentioned. And again, what is the contribution of this candidate? If it's a cricket team, he could very well be a player of, like, he could be a part of team, but actually wouldn't have played in the game. That could be a possibility. So unless that candidate specifies that, oh, he scored, say, a century in a final, or a 50 or a 30 or 20 runs in final match, or he has taken wickets in final match, I mean, without those context, this achievement is pretty meaningless, right? So not to do it. So what should we do? So explain the benefit. Again, you see on the screens on the right here, so which says awarded EY kudos in the first year of internship. So now this tells me that, okay, somebody has got some award, but for what? So for exemplary performance and going the extra mile in the quarterly and year-end audits. So this is not the best of the writing, but at least it gives you some sense that, okay, somebody has gone, beyond his day-to-day job, and he has delivered something which probably wasn't even expected of him. Now, even if you look at or if you read the second line, which says consistently ranked first in school and junior colleges in academics and secured 90 plus percentile in 10th and 12th. Again, this gives a significant kind of, details on what that candidate has achieved. Now let's look at the last one. So it says awarded Change Delivery Excellence Award for decommissioning segmental reporting that saved 400 hours annually for Credit Suisse. Again, do you see a difference? That here the candidate has mentioned the award, but for what? For decommissioning segmental reporting. So even if I don't understand what segmental reporting is, I would at least understand that he has stopped something, right? And what is the impact? Impact of it is the candidate has saved 400 hours, right? And is also quantified it in like a monetary term. So that says INR 300,000 for Credit Suisse. So this probably makes little more sense, right? And probably a much better example as compared to the first two. Make sense? Any questions on this?
So I would, I want to ask, what does a student do who doesn't have any achievements to talk about? I think the first one is such a person wherein he just wants to fill up the resume. Do we simply fill it up like this, or better not to write anything at all? And then there's nothing to speak about also. So how does one tackle this kind of a problem?
Yep, very good question, Mira ma'am. So if you don't have an achievement, you anyways don't have anything to talk about. There is no point filling up a resume with meaningless information. I mean, all of us are matured individuals, right? We understand that this is not an exam where you write ton of things and then hope that somebody, just because he does not want to read, so somebody will give you a mark. This is not an exam. So as a candidate, it is your job to make hiring manager's job as easy as possible. Let's accept the fact, and I would accept it on behalf of all corporate employees, that most of us are very lazy. Hiring is actually a headache for most of the hiring managers because they don't get paid for hiring people, right? It's an overhead for them. So if it is overhead for me, I would try to do it with minimalistic effort. Now, once you understand that that this is my psyche, I would probably prefer that candidate gives me the information that I'm looking for. Instead of saying that, oh, I participated in cricket, whereas I am doing a recruitment for, say, a software engineer. Now, software engineer and cricket is nowhere connected. I mean, I understand that it could be a hobby and you could have been a fantastic match winner, but unless I see relevance of that activity with my business, I wouldn't probably give much of an attention to it. So what happens is, in the process, this type of generic statements end up wasting my time. And I would definitely, hate anybody wasting my time. So I would prefer that if you don't have an achievement, don't write. That's fine. Not everybody, has circumstances where, or they would get an opportunity to participate in events. Somebody would participate but not win it. Again, India is such a competitive market that whichever field you go in, there is always a heavy competition. So you don't have to feel bad about it, or you don't have to think that, oh, I don't have achievements, so how am I going to do it? There's no need. Corporate life will present you with a lot of opportunities where you will get, again, ton of things to participate in, and you will get ton of awards. So there's no dearth of accomplishments. But if you don't have it when you start your career, that's all fine. nobody would hold it back against you that, oh, candidate, is an average or candidate does not have achievements. Nobody thinks it that way. Even most hiring managers wouldn't have much of an achievements on their resume. So don't think, anything differently on it.
I've seen one section called interests also in some
Mhm.
people. So does that make sense or it doesn't make sense?
To me, again, interest is something, for example, let's say I am very interested in politics, but how does that help my employer? It does not, right? I am interested in cricket. I am interested in gossiping, right? But that does not help my employer. So there's no point in writing an interest that does not help an employer. Now, on the contrary, let's say I am applying for ESPN. Now, ESPN being a sports company, if I say that I have a tremendous interest in football, volleyball, cricket, carom, or marathon, running, this and that, I'm sure ESPN would take it seriously.
Mhm.
Or if I am applying for, let's say, Nestle, right? Nestle is a food company, or for that matter, Kisan. Kisan is a food company. If I say that I am a foodie, I like to experiment with food, or I can cook good food, or I love to, go into hotels and try different delicacies. Now that is something that my employer would find a value in, because then he knows that I can connect to the business, I can connect to the business people, and I can bring more value to the table as compared to other candidate who does not have interest in that field. So if you're interested related to the to your hiring manager's business, then I'm sure hiring manager would find interest, and therefore you should mention it. But
Only
if it is
then.
very irrelevant, yeah, if it is irrelevant to the business, I don't think then it makes sense to mention it. Or at times it may so happen that, like, a lot of people nowadays go for hiking, and they would go to Himalaya, or they would go for some trekking. They would have some significant accomplishment to showcase. Now here there is no winner, right? In trekking there is no winner, and I like that sports very much because there's no winner in it, everybody wins. So if you have scaled to a certain height, let's say you do a Himalayan trek, you can mention that it's a high point for me. It's an achievement for me. I am very much interested in trekking. Now, a field like trekking could entice interest from a lot of recruiters or a lot of hiring managers. So even though it may not be connected with any field, but at least it shows that that you have a discipline, or you have probably willingness to go extra mile. And there are some other things that again managers look at, that if you have a hobby, or if you participate in some of the sports, then probably you would generally be a good person, right? Because when you play with a team, you have to kind of expose yourself to multiple people, multiple scenarios. So so that is something that as a recruiter, a lot of people would value. I don't know, that was a pretty long winded answer, but did that help?
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay.
Sir, I think I got confused. So
Okay.
what do you mean when you say you uh, mention what are the what are the achievements you think you should be mentioned and what shouldn't? Because
Okay.
you said if I'm interested in sports, then you said if I'm interested in trekking, so it is kind of confusing.
Okay, I will clarify that. So there are two things that I mentioned. One is, if your interest and your recruiter's business or your hiring manager's business is related, by all means mention. Good example is, again, if you're applying for ESPN and if you play any sports, by all means mention. Now let's say that
Okay.
you go for trekking and you are applying for, say, Infosys. Now Infosys is an organization that sponsors a lot of initiatives. So at least this wouldn't help you in your like an application, but this would help you to start some conversation. So I would still, in such a case, I would still mention that, oh, I'm participate, or I go for trekking. Trekking is my interest. But when you mention that, make sure that you have some examples, make sure that you have at least participated in some of the either trekkings or in some of the marathon runs or something somewhere to demonstrate. Don't mention that, oh, I am a fitness freak, but the last time I went to a gym was like 2 years ago. I
Okay.
don't know if that made sense.
No, it did. See, the
Okay.
where my confusion came in was
Mm-hmm.
you said, uh, when you say my interest is cricket and you're looking for a software engineer,
Yeah.
wouldn't that show until unless, okay, now I get it. Interest
Yeah.
being cricket and playing cricket are two different things.
Correct. And plus, if you don't play it on a regular basis, again, there's no point mentioning it. Like everybody's interested in cricket, but most of us are interested in watching cricket, not playing cricket.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. I got
Okay.
it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, no problem. Any other questions on this one? I see somebody has put something in the chat. Let me see. Oh, should we change our resume according to company and occasionally? Yes. Resume is a living document. Don't think that this is a static one. So you should update your resume every now and then, every time you win an award or you participate into any activity or you do something good or you achieve a certification, education, or you join a job. Always, always update your resume. Keep it updating every time not when you are looking for a job, but when you actually not looking for a job. That's the best time to update a resume and say that this is what I have achieved or this is the addition in my resume. Also, let's say if you are applying especially for freshers, if you are applying for an internship, and let's say you are applying for an NGO, and then at the same time you're also applying for, let's say, software engineer. Now remember, NGO and software engineer would have two different requirements. So if you go with the same resume, I think it's going to be very hard for both the recruiters to find a value in it. So if I am going for an NGO, I would at least demonstrate my social aspects, like how good I am with friends, or how. And again, here playing a sports which has like a team angle, I think that would do wonders. But if I am going for a software engineering job, then the skills that will be evaluated are like, say, mathematics or my rational thinking, to some extent team player also, but not at the cost of skills. So I would highlight like my skills as more on my technical skills like software development, mathematics, science, or participation into some events. That is something that I would highlight when I'm going for, say, software job versus NGO. So you see a difference in how you kind of arrange your resume. So the lines that should be at the top of resumes or even on the first page of resumes would differ by what kind of employer you are going for. Just give me a minute. Actually, my kid is crying. I have to attend him. Give me a minute.
So this is the time for all of you to reflect upon what he has told till now and go ahead and ask questions. More and never think any question is silly. Keep asking. And the more you ask, things will be clear for you. So we have Dharani. She says, sir, what are interests we have to include when we are searching for IT fields?
So normally I have seen that people going for IT jobs, particularly into software engineering, testing, those kind of jobs would have interest in, say, solving Sudoku puzzles or solving mathematical problems. A lot of people would also have interest in general, solving like mathematical equations, presenting research papers. A lot of people would also find interest in reading latest about new technologies. Now, reading does not mean that you skim through a page. Reading means that, somebody, let's say, have come up with a research on AI. Now, when you talk about AI is pretty big field, right? So when you read an article, make sure that you synthesize it. Make sure that you understand the key crux of that article. What is it that our author is trying to say? Formulate your own thinking, and then say, I read an article on, say, Chat GPT, and this is what my understanding of Chat GPT. But when you articulate that, make sure that you don't sound like a layman person like me. You have to sound probably very, very refined, because then you are going for a software engineering kind of a job, whereas I am an average reader or average reviewer. So your understanding of a software has to be much better than what my understanding is. Now, how do we do that? Of course, for that, you have to do a lot of reading. You have to talk to or listen to people who are best in the industry, people who are doing research on a topic like, say, ChatGPT, and that would probably, fine tune your understanding. So things like that I like to experiment with, say, new applications, or I like to learn new technologies, or I like to build something, even if you are building something into GitHub or something that is very temporary in nature. it is fine to mention all of those hobbies or all of those as like an interest, because then your hiring manager would find some value, because you would find some relative context that that, oh, you at least have demonstrated some interest in software development. So you're not like a complete fresher whom they have to teach or whom they have to understand whether the candidate even have an interest or not. So you already show that you have an interest. So find out things which will demonstrate your interest. So again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but I have probably tried to showcase what I know best. I
No,
don't know
that
if
was
that
good.
helped. Yeah.
No, no, that was good. So I have another question. My son is studying in IIT Madras and
Uh-huh.
he does a lot of quizzing. And I keep
Yeah.
telling him, is this really useful? He enjoys it. I said, okay, fine, but I don't know if it's useful. So I just want to ask, he does a lot of inter-college quizzing and he's won a lot of quizzing awards. So how does a recruiter look at that?
Well, to recruiter, it doesn't make a lot of difference, especially skill like quizzing, unless you are going into a skill where you are expected to kind of conduct quizzes. In that case, yes, if you have some background on quizzes, by all means that would be useful. But I haven't seen any profile where you are expected to ask questions and endless questions, right? I haven't seen such profiles. But what it demonstrates is at least you have some different life, and people generally coming from IITs and IIMs, I think there is already enough material that they have to show on their resumes, that like they would have done a lot of projects on AIs and technologies and even on mechanical engineering and whatnot. So they need to show some variety. People expect IITs, people coming from IITs and IIMs to be little different, as if they have come from the moon. So just to have that something different to talk about, I think it is fine to mention it. But honestly, hiring managers, it
Don't
doesn't
care.
make any difference. Yeah, they will probably just read it. Oh, you have won a quiz, and they can use it as a starting point so that candidate warms up to the interview. Instead of directly bombarding candidate with a question, they would start with something which is very soft, which is something that candidate would find interesting. But apart from that, it does not play much of a role in their making a decision on whether to hire a person or not. Okay, what do I write if I don't have any experience in the job field I am applying to? Oh, you can't write anything, Chandrasekhar. If you don't have an experience, I wonder what you can write. All you can write is if you have, say, maybe read an article, or if you have published a research paper, or if you have done a project in that industry. I think that's all you can write. Apart from that, I think you should stick to what you know best. Let's say even if you are applying for a software engineering job, but in the past you have done, say, journalism, or if you have done some NGO kind of activity, it is fine to mention that and say that, I did that, but then I realized my core interest is actually in software development. So I'm trying to experiment myself, or I'm trying to expose myself into software development field. Uh, People at a fresher level, hiring managers wouldn't expect you to have any work experience, or wouldn't expect you to have ton of knowledge on the specific field. They would expect you to have a skill, meaning thereby if you say that, oh, I learned C or C++ or Java, right? Then if they ask you a question, they would expect you to know the answers of those questions. Even if you don't have an experience, that is fine. Did
So
that answer your question?
I have
Mhm.
another more than a question, and I think a suggestion to all the students.
Mhm.
So it's not that everybody is going to apply for jobs immediately. So this is a time for you to reflect upon, okay, these are the things that I can't put on the resume. How do I start building my resume? One is just writing your
Correct.
resume. This is what you're learning now. What do you put on the resume? But on the other hand, you can reflect and start working towards building your resume, wherein you say, what are the different experiences you can gain? What is the knowledge you can gain? What is it that you can do so that you can put it on the resume wherein you stand out? Isn't it, sir?
Yes, yes, that's a very wonderfully articulated point, Mira ma'am. So now you know that what hiring managers are looking for. I think this is a good time that you prepare yourself. You read articles, publish papers, you participated in social activities. Again, certification is not much of a value, but even if you participate and mention that, oh, I am doing a specific activity consistently, what people are interested in understanding is what is the contribution. So let's say even if you are teaching a kid, maybe that kid is going in a first class or a second class, and you are teaching basic mathematics of addition and subtraction. So if you are teaching that consistently to a kid and kid gets it, kids love the way you teach, that itself will be a very, very value add for the corporates, because then corporates know that teaching a kid is not an easy job, right? It's not a kid's business anymore. So when you have to teach something which is as complex as say addition and subtraction at the age of 4 and 5, I think you need a lot of patience. And I think a lot of corporates, especially corporate managers, understand that patience is not an easy game. You have to practice it over and over. So at least they will be confident that, oh, you have some patience. But again, this is something you have to probably explicitly speak in interview. It may not come out in your resume directly. But at least you can start building up your career and your profile, thinking all of these points in your mind.
And do a lot of internships. So
Yes.
internships are, and of course, Asha and Planet Foundation offers a lot of internships. We have students who intern with us.
Mhm. Yeah. That's a wonderful opportunity. I think the platform that Meera ma'am you have providing students, I think that's a wonderful platform. You can really make a difference to the society, and in at least to corporates, you can prove that, oh, you are not just spending time and clicking of a button and applying on jobs, but actually while that all is happening, you are also taking care of your social life, you are building connections, you are trying to contribute to the society. And I think this is a human value which probably would do wonders to you. If you have helped somebody, I'm sure somebody would help you, right? It's a reciprocation that happens on this earth. And that's the highest investment, by the highest return on investment that you can get. When you help someone, someone will help you. It's not the same person, it could be a different person. But yeah, when you help someone, someone will help. God is keeping a track of your accounts. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Any more questions on achievements, accomplishments? One more thing I think that I forgot to mention is, again, as I said, a lot of people would say either like this is an awards or achievements or accomplishments. You can pick any one word. It doesn't have to be very flowery. You keep it as simple as possible. Simply say awards or achievements. I think that should be fine. I have seen a lot of people use a lot of, like French words, Italian words, and hiring managers struggle to understand what those means. So don't do anything fancy. Stick with the standard. Okay. Um, Let's move on. So some people would have projects in their resumes. Again, we'll see some of the examples. So somebody writing analysis of transcritical CO2 system, automatic curtain opening system. I will start with the don'ts. When you see this type of things, again, it's a half pointer, very difficult to follow. I do not know what does analysis of transcritical CO2 system mean. Now, you might be a technical engineer or a chemical engineer or a systems engineer, but as a hiring manager, I am not. Or even if I am, I still wouldn't connect to it because I would have, read this probably years ago. Automatic curtain opening system. I do not know what does it mean. Is it industrial curtain? Is it curtain at your home? I do not know what technologies you applied. So very difficult to follow without context. So what are the do's? Explain the benefit. Good example is here. Automation of CapEx commitment report and cash flow statement. Now this is very contextual, which most finance people would understand, but I think as a general audience, you would still find some relevance. So here candidate says, management wanted cash flow statements and CapEx reports regularly. The earlier process consumed a substantial amount of time. I performed proof of concept to demonstrate automation opportunities. After careful deliberation, management approved the project. Currently, an analysis of various data sources is in progress. Now, does this project description gives you any sense of what candidate is doing? Do you feel this is good? Sorry, it's me asking question now.
I think our students are not very open to questions. At least
Okay.
it makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. Identify unused budget. So Geo had like significant unutilized budgetary allocation. I proactively identified such items and raised them to management. My efforts led to the release of a substantial budget. So again, this is very contextual, but at least candidate has made an effort to elaborate, what this project is and what is the outcome. Again, you see in both the statements, project or the description actually ends at an outcome. So in the last one, it says my efforts led to the release of a substantial budget. So they were able to release a lot of budgets, which eventually saves the money for the company, right? And here you can see that he's performed a proof of concept and he's demonstrated automation opportunities, which is what the outcome is. So, and this is what, kind of hiring manager is looking for. So they want to understand that whatever you are doing in either in your personal life, your social life, or in your corporate life. What is the outcome that you get? What is the outcome that you achieve? And a lot of time we don't think about outcome. We simply do the activity because my friend is doing, my father is telling me to do, somebody is telling me to do this or that. Sometimes it's just a herd mentality that because everybody is doing it, let me do it. So this is where you have to think and then say, what would I achieve if I do this? If you think that, oh, my outcome wouldn't be tangible, don't do it. You can stop doing it. You can get onto a project which has tangible delivery, or you can get onto a project which probably gives you some recognition, where you can actually make a difference. Again, when it comes to project, social sectors, NGOs are a very good place to get exposed to smaller projects. Like some NGOs would say, oh, we need help with accounting. Somebody would say we need help with budgeting, or we need help with, say somebody's doing some irrigation work and they might need people to do some basic work like a digging up of a hole, or educating people on how to dug up something or how to plant a tree. Now this may seem like a very small initiative, but if you if you put it in a like a project kind of a mode, this would still qualify like a very good achievement. So this is like a quick hack that if you do a lot of small activities, like somebody might be doing internship opportunities for like 10 days, 15 days, somebody is helping someone to, let's say, run a marketing campaign. Some of you as a student might be like selling something. So don't feel bad about it. Simply say that I have worked on this project from this period to that period, and this is what I have achieved. This allows you to quantify again your achievements, and this gives you this section actually helps you to showcase what is it that you are capable of doing it, and it gives them an evidence that, oh, you have done this past. You are not you're not thinking in a hazy air, but you have something to showcase. So this is a good section that you can use to your benefit. Any questions on this?
So this identify unused budgets. This
Mhm.
guy's case would have been stronger if he had actually, he said, release of a substantial budget. If
Yep.
he had numbered it, if he had quantified it, it would have been even more value, isn't it?
Correct. Yes. Definitely. That's a very good, very valid point. So if you can quantify anything, like if this candidate would have said, oh, I released a budget of say INR 100,000, that would have made significant difference, because then the management or the hiring manager understands the size and scale that candidate is working at. So, but yeah, I think he probably, I don't know why he didn't mention, maybe he didn't add those numbers, but
Maybe
yeah.
it was not substantial, but he felt it was.
Yeah. And a lot of time this is what happens, that we get so much engrossed in our work that we forget about the quantification, and it's only after years when we realize, oh, now we have to prepare a resume. So now then we start thinking, oh, how much I have saved. But of course, after years, you don't remember. That is where it is very important to keep this resume as like a live document. So the moment you do some projects like this, immediately go and update your resume, because then the information would be fresh in your mind. You would be able to recollect everything, and you would be able to make a justice to this section.
Correct.
Yeah. If no questions, hobbies.
Mhm.
Okay, a lot of people write interests as traveling, photography, exploring old temples. Somebody would say guitar, swimming, music, book reading, playing games, and whatnot. Recommendation again, no, unless it is very related. Again, good example is ESPN or Star Sports or say Geo Cinema. If you are applying for Geo Cinema, and if you have interest in watching TVs, watching movies, or you play drama, or you play a guitar, a musical instrument, by all means mention. Again, if you're applying for software jobs, this is again another section that most hiring managers would completely skip, unless you are able to demonstrate how your kind of skill or your hobby is related to software development. If you could showcase that, mention. If you cannot, skip.
But on the other hand, now, for example, they give a lot of importance to creativity and critical thinking and all that. So some of these things, don't you think it showcases those qualities?
Well,
At least creativity?
it does. Unfortunate reality of the world is hiring managers wouldn't hire you based on your creativity unless they are into creative business. Again, if
Mhm.
you are like applying for an arts teacher kind of a role, by all means, hobbies for an arts teacher is like a very good handbook to have. But again, if you're applying for a software role, software engineering role, and a hobby like a traveling, again, hiring managers are not interested. For sure, traveling, photography is not going to make hiring managers' decision. He is not going to select you or reject you in either case, just looking at your interest. He cannot ask you any question on, oh, do you love traveling? I mean, that could be the only question. And where have you been before? So that could be only ice-breaking question. But apart from that, there's nothing that, there's nothing that you can do with it. Sorry, did somebody have a question?
No.
Okay.
Then I think by mistake.
All right. So this again, a lot of people get distracted by this, and then we have already gone through like 6 or 7 sections, right? So even at a fresher level, or even for an experienced candidate, after like going through 6 or 7 section, most recruiters are like exhausted. So there's no point putting up an additional section of interest, especially when it's not going to make any difference to your hiring decision. They would neither select you nor reject you based on your hobbies. So it doesn't make a difference. So don't mention. Again, caveat, unless it's a related one. Okay, makes sense? Good to move. Soft skills. Again, one area which I see in lot of resumes mentioned is skills. There are 2 types of skills, soft skills and technical skills. Here, candidate has mentioned just as a skill, and is mentioned project support, working knowledge of VBA, customer service, disputes chargeback, Microsoft Office, invoice processing, accounts payable, content moderator. Again, lot of skills. Somebody came up with a diagram. I do not know actually what this diagram represents, but that's just a very fancy way of showcasing a skill. Innovative, communicator, team player, thinker, collaborative, intuitive. Somebody
Sir,
has written
I
a,
have one.
sorry, go ahead.
This thing is, when my children were, I met a career counselor when my children were studying, and she said something which I feel is wonderful. So I thought, let me just share. She
Sure.
said, never say that I did this. Always say, I've learned this by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say you played soccer, don't say I played soccer great. No, by playing soccer, I learned how to work in a team, and I
Mm-hmm.
also took opportunities to lead when there was a necessity.
Yep. That's a wonderful insight, wonderful point that you have mentioned, ma'am. In this case, it's very hard for, let's say, a fresher or even for an experienced candidate to say, oh, I learned, how to work with a team by playing hockey or by playing cricket. It is very hard to write that on a resume, and it's tough to kind of incorporate that in any specific section of a resume. But having said that, it is a very good thing to add it in your like a question where people say, "Tell me about yourself." So that is a place where you can add some of this stuff to say, like in your "Tell me about yourself" or in your introduction section, people generally struggle for the content. So this is could be a good starting point to say that, I play hockey. And why I play hockey is because I learned how to work with a team. Or somebody would say that, why should we select you? So again, you can bring in this example to say, I play hockey, or, I learned how to work with a team, so I can be a good team player by playing hockey. So that is again a good place to demonstrate that. But writing it on the resume could be, stretching things a little far. And a lot of people, also have to understand the psyche of a recruiter, that there's a lot of time ego is involved in between. So generally, most people want to hire a person who's, little lesser than them. There are very few hiring managers who would say, oh, I would hire someone who's much better than me. So if that person does not like to play cricket, or does not, or that player, does not like game at all, and you mentioning a game and you mentioning your accomplishment, and my guess is, a lot of people will say, oh, let me not hire this guy. It generally does not happen that way. I'm giving a bit of an extreme example, but I'm just saying that you also have to understand the psyche of a recruiter. So if it does not make a difference in hiring decision, I mean, don't mention. Like again, this soft skills, you can see there's a lot of things that are mentioned here. But this is something like communication skill, adaptability, teamwork. I can write, you can write. How are we two different? Never know. But guess what? Your ability to work with a team would be very different than my ability to work with a team. Your communication skill would be very different than my communication skill. So anything that is generic, don't mention. Anything that is specific, for example, programming in C++, or I know how to do a digital marketing, or I know how to run ads on Google or Facebook or Instagram. These are very specific skills. Or I know how to build a LinkedIn profile. I know how to write a resume, or I know how to do an interview training, or I can deliver a training on a specific topic. Now, these are very specific skills, and I think you should definitely mention that. I would qualify that as a technical skill, but anything that is generic and sounds like a very verbose, something like problem solving, creativity, work ethics, time management. I mean, very generic skill. Everybody has it, but probably nobody even has it, right? So it can go either ways. This is also an opportunity where a lot of people, go very verbose and say, oh, I am an excellent cricketer. Now, the moment you say that is an opportunity for a hiring manager to bash you up, and hiring manager would say, okay, tell me how many matches you won, or what was the last time, you won a man of the match award, or did you rescued your team from a difficult situation? Now, if you have such examples, by all means mention. But most people wouldn't have such an example. So instead of fabricating a story, it is recommended that, oh, don't mention it, don't go overboard. Simply say that, oh, I learned C++, remain modest. Say that, oh, I learned Power BI. And you underplay your skill. You can say that, oh, I have learned probably, 30% of it, not 100%. Nobody anyways can learn 100% of any skill. But you say, oh, probably, based on my understanding of this field, I probably know 30% of it or 20% of it. So yeah, try to underplay it, because that is what people would like the most. They would understand that, oh, there's a humility in this candidate, and probably he can be coachable. If he doesn't know a thing or two, we can always teach him. So, you would remain open for those options. That is what I think you have to demonstrate when you talk about the skills. Any questions on this?
Being humble always helps.
Yes, it does. Any questions on this? Any clarifications? Anybody wants to add anything? This is very debatable, actually. A lot of people would not agree, and I'm kind of fine with it. It's just that as a hiring manager, I don't find a value when somebody says, oh, I am innovative. And when I ask them, oh, what did you innovate? And they will say, oh, probably I have written some program. And I say, oh, that program is already in place. Somebody has a sophisticated solution. So what is new thing in you? And they said, no, there's nothing new. So if you don't have any example, be careful when you use these big words. These are very jargons. Like somebody would say, oh, I'm a team player. And then when I ask, oh, how many friends you have? And people will say, oh, 2 or 3. If you have 2 or 3 friends, I wonder if you really have a, kind of team player skill set. Not to say that you will be bad in team. It's just that it means that you are not actively kind of practicing that skill. You have it, but it's in a deep sleep mode. Okay, let's move to the next section. Personal details. Again, good examples. People write date of birth, gender, nationality, passport, this, that, address. Not required. It does not play any role in hiring decisions. Address is nowadays, I think this is a history, because don't expect any company to send you any physical document. Plus, they would also, if they have to send you something, they will reconfirm your address. When you join a company, they will ask you to fill up a lot of forms, and I think that will act as your proof for the address. So there is no point mentioning addresses or date of birth, passport numbers, your marital status, genders in a resume. This is absolutely not required. Linguistic ability, now again, this could be debatable thing. In certain sectors, linguistic abilities are required. Again, good example is NGO. Let's say if you work in a Assam location, or if you work in Chennai, then your language skills could play a role. But if you, let's say, work in USA, where everybody plays or everybody understands or speaks in an English language, their language may not make a lot of a difference. But if you are expected to work with people who speak multi-language, then mention linguistic abilities. If that is not an expectation, don't mention it. Okay, any question? Do people agree? I think there are a couple of questions. Being humble always makes somebody will take it as advantage, sir. No, not necessary. Yeah, sometimes you may feel that way, but what does being humble means is also not to expect anything from anybody. If you are humble just because you want something good from me, I think then that's not what I would call it as a humble ability. I would probably say that it's more like a strategy that, oh, I would remain humble so that I get probably some blessings or some favoritism from a specific person. So that's not what humble would mean. Humble would simply mean that you acknowledge that the field could be very vast. If you read about Sachin Tendulkar, right, or for that matter even Virat Kohli or any sports person or any politician, they would always say that I am not the best batsman, although I would have scored 10,000 run, 20,000 run, but I probably learned only 50% in the field. Because guess what, your life and this field is so big that there could be thousands of ways a shot could be played. Now you might have tried one way of playing a shot and that works for you, and therefore you have continued to practice it. But as you can see, a lot of player nowadays, again, I'm giving a lot of example from sports, and I'm sure a lot of people would probably can relate to it. Again, Surya Kumar Yadav can play one ball into five different, the same ball in five different places. Now that's a skill that even Sachin Tendulkar wouldn't have practiced, because he's comfortable playing a shot, playing a specific ball at a specific place. Now, when you develop that sort of skill, you always say that, oh, the field is so vast that there could be so many things that I have not tried. So you accept that although you are successful, but the field is so big that you will never get to know enough about it. You will continue to be a student. So that's what humbleness would mean for me, at least for me. That's my definition. Okay, being genuine is more important in terms of skills, especially. Yes, that's a very good point, Lokesh. Yeah, genuineness is always appreciated. If you practice a specific skills by all means mention. If you don't practice, and if there's just a fear that, oh, if I don't mention mathematics as a skill, then I don't get selected in software industry. I mean, that's more like a cheating, right? If you practice the skill, mention it. If you don't practice a skill, don't mention. Yeah, so genuineness always helps. All right. Any other question on this topic? No? Okay. I think hopefully next one should be the last one, declaration. A lot of people write this: I undersign hereby declare that above given is true to the best of my knowledge, and there are a lot of variations. I hereby declare that all information is true. Again, one more example, big no. So here again, the understanding is that when you are submitting your information as a corporate, we trust you. We trust you that you are a matured individual. You understand the consequence that if you falsify any information, it's gonna have a repercussions on your profile, on your reputation, on your career, on your future. So we understand that when you are saying that, oh, in 10th standard I have scored 85 percentage, I'm sure you would have a mark sheet that will say, yeah, 85 percentages. Don't say that I have scored 85 and then show me a mark sheet of 60%, right? So we always trust you. So this declaration statement is never ever required. I do not know where it came from. I saw that in so many resumes that I got fed up of it. So no need to mention this. You don't need to sign on your resume. It's not a, what do you say? It's not like an authenticated document. It's just a marketing document. Resume is always a marketing document which needs to be substantiated afterwards. So when you say that, oh, you have worked for a specific organization, as an HR manager, I would ask you for certification, and that's the time you have to certify. But I wouldn't just necessarily go by your resume. Resume is not an authenticated document. It's just a marketing document. Always remember that. So never ever put this declaration kind of a thing. This is something that generally government officers will write, that it's a declaration of something. You are not a government officer and you don't have that authority. So there's no point to have that in your resume. Okay, so learning what to write and what not to write. So it is very important to know what to write, and I think we have gone through what to write. It's also important to understand what not to write, and I think we have seen enough those examples that what not to write. Differentiator. So resume could often be a differentiator between promising job versus an average job. And why I also say differentiator is because if you really work hard on your resume, if you pay attention to all that we have covered today, and of course, this is just like a beginner, a very vanilla kind of a course. There's a possibility of doing a little bit of advanced module at some point in time. But if you pay attention to all of these aspects and don't take anything for granted, I think you can still sound as if you are very different than from the rest of the crowd that are coming for the interview process. So, and recruiters do pay attention to whatever you write, but then a lot of time they get so many resumes that there's a global survey, by the way, that somebody did a very global survey, and they came up with a number that generally recruiters spend 6 seconds to decide whether candidate should be given even more time to go through the remaining pages of your resume. So if you don't make a cut in first 6 seconds, or if you don't make an impression in first 6 seconds, which means the hiring managers would say, oh, let me review some other resume. And again, that candidate also gets a 6 seconds. If he fails to make, again, recruiters would go to the next resume. Now, that's the kind of competition that we have in India, at least, or at least in Asia Pacific market. So now to stand out from the crowd, make sure that you have right things captured on your resume. Make sure that your resume is not bloated with a lot of verbs and a lot of jargons and a lot of things written that nobody is interested to read. So resume's job is actually not to get you a job, but it's actually the resume's job or resume's objective is to open the door for you and make sure that you are being presented as different from the crowd. Okay, so
So
some
one
of the
more thing
resource.
I want to add, wherein I have seen resumes
Mm-hmm.
full of grammatical errors and
Yes,
very bad formatting. So that absolutely is it's a no. So
correct.
students have to be very careful. It shows laziness, incompetency, and everything. So if your English is not good, use AI tools, ask a friend, sit with a professor, make sure your English is right. I feel, I don't know how important that this is, and the formatting should be good, isn't it, sir? All your
Yes.
capitals and
Yep. Yep. That plays a very, very important role because people then think, oh, do you pay attention to your details? Now you have been asked to only write a 1-pager or 2-pager resume. If that is full of grammatical mistakes, there is no proper attention to the format, some fonts are bold, and I think we have seen a good example of it. Let me see if I can find that. I think it was somewhere here. Yeah, if you see content and then you see a moderator, those are two different fonts. Right now, these are the things that hiring managers would kind of notice and will say, oh, this guy probably does not pay enough attention to the fonts, even though he's writing about himself, which should be of greater interest to him, but he's not careful about it. He's not very serious about it. So in such situation, given that if I have like 10 candidates to choose, I wouldn't choose that candidate who's got a lot of mistakes in his resume. So I think Meera ma'am has mentioned a very good point that yes, there are AI tools available. So if I understand that English is second language for most of us, it will never be as good as Britishers English. Therefore, there are tools even within Word. You don't even actually have to go to AI tools. You can also use MS Word, which has got a lot of linguistic abilities, and it will prevent you from making obvious, errors on grammars. So by all means, use that. And format, again, I think even if you keep a simple format, I think that is also good enough. You don't have to have a fancy format, but good format is also a decent one. Can you please suggest us good resume format? I can show actually. I have kept some examples. There is no I don't follow a specific template or a specific pattern. I look at the candidates and how much material does the candidate has, how much content we want to put it on resume, and basis that I kind of prepare template on my own. But I can give you a feel of what looks like a good resume, and I think then you can make your decision if you want to follow that format. Okay, so there are some resources that I thought could be of help to you. So what I have done is I kept a resume assessment template or resume assessment site on my site. If you drop your resume, I can do a free resume assessment. And I have also written a book which is available on Flipkart as well as on Amazon. So if you want to learn resume writing as a skill, by all means pick this book up and go through the details. I think this goes in more greater detail than what we have covered in 1 hour. 1 hour is generally not enough to go through and understand resume, but if you pick this book up, I think you can finish that off in half a day. And resume writing is a skill that can come to your use probably throughout your life. If you look at, like, you will work for 40 years, generally people would change job every 2 or 3 years. So this is a good skill to learn. Don't take it for granted. And it's very hard to write about your own self, so you have to really practice it. Okay, these are some of the examples. So some of the resumes that I've crafted in the past that has opened the doors for people. So you see, I generally typically like to add a photo. I like to add a bit of a background color. I use a lot of fonts, and I've also I consciously use LinkedIn links and email IDs, addresses. Again, address, if you see, I just mention a specific area and a city. I don't like mention a complete postal address. Even nowadays, sometimes I don't even mention this address because a lot of us are working from home, and a lot of us are in like a global setup where address and city and area completely becomes irrelevant. So these are some of the examples. I will scroll through. This is another format where I'm mentioning like skills at the top, then work experience. Again, you see the usage of color. I am not shy from using, darker colors. Even if you see this blue one, which is like a sky blue, but I'm okay to use that. So this is allowed. If you see here, like I'm using yellow color because this guy is little bold. He's taking up an opportunity which is beyond, like people at his age do not take up those opportunities. Here he's probably far matured than his age. So I'm using little bolder colors. So here I'm using green color and a black color. So you see, generally this two columnar format is what we call it. This generally works best. So when in doubt, always use two columnar format. If you have a lot of content, you can use this one columnar format where, you put the content like on one page and then there is no segregating columns as such. It just follows through a sequence. Whereas here you can read it either on the left hand side first and then you choose to read on the right hand side, or you can read right hand side first and then go on left hand side, or you can read both in parallel. So either ways. So these are like 2 or 3 formats. With that, I think we are little ahead of, we have reached probably, we have exceeded our time limit. I didn't realize that. So thank you so much. If you need any help, you can always, shoot me an email. These are my credentials. I'm available on LinkedIn. There's a site. So there are ways to reach out to me. And I think you can also reach out to Meera ma'am. And I think this organization, I think wonderful, the work that Meera ma'am is doing.
So thanks a lot, sir. It was not one bit boring or unnecessary, and to the point and crisp and very interesting way of presenting the whole thing. I'm sure our students have learned quite a lot. And yes, like you said, this is
We
the
have
first
also learned
stage.
quite a lot, Meera.
Yeah, absolutely. We have also learned quite a lot. And like you said, this is the first step, and let the students start working on what you have taught now. And after a couple of maybe weeks, again, we'll have one more session wherein you can do an advanced course for the students, wherein we can go in detail, in depth.
I would recommend not to have advanced course at this point in time. I think this basic stuff, let them go through this basic first. Once they are to a level where they need an advanced coaching, I think that point in time I would be more than happy to do advanced level coaching. At this point in time, I think they don't need it.
And they're all freshers only. All of them
Yeah.
are freshers. I think we have Santosh here who is already working. Other than that, everybody is looking for jobs still.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to confuse them. I think stick with the basics. I think that would serve them wonderfully well. Yeah, I would stop there.
So thanks once again, sir. It was lovely having you.
Yep. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Kritika and Meera ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Kritika, for organizing, being patient with me, changing the timings. I know it's not very easy, but yeah, I really appreciate all of the hard work that you guys are doing. And to my students, all the best. I would love to see your resumes. If you feel like you want to share something, of course, my email IDs are given, or you can send it to Meera ma'am, and then in turn she can send it to me. Either ways, I'm fine. But yeah, give it a shot. If you have any questions, clarifications, don't hesitate to come back to me.
Sure, sure.
All right. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Have a great day ahead.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.